Greetings, people of the interwebs. Jake here, and welcome to another episode of Reviews over Brews. So, if you didn't check out that first episode and want a bit of a refresher, or if this is the first time you've come to this channel or seen this series, welcome and let me tell you a little bit about it. It's pretty simple. So, essentially, what I do is I review something, whether it be a movie, a TV show, comic book, album, whatever tickles my fancy, and just review it over my favorite brew. So, I will first talk about my brew of choice for this evening. So I'm drinking what is called White Girl Wasted, which I like the title. That's kind of why I decided to go with this beer. It's also a blonde ale and comes from Mere Twin Brewing, which is a local brewery. So, with that out of the way, now that you know what I'm drinking, let's dive into the review. So, I'll be honest. I will be very impressed, but also surprised if many of you, or any of you, have even heard of this series. So, for those of you, most likely all of you, who have not heard of Outlaw Star, let me tell you about my all-time favorite anime series. So this aired originally in 1998, and although it didn't air in the U.S., and I think most of like the Western world, until the early 2000s. So I first watched it, it probably was in 2001, in Toonami, back in the glory days of Toonami and, just this kind of great golden age of anime, or what I'd consider the first kind of golden age of anime, at least for the West, where we were introduced to a lot of these shows like Dragon Ball Z, Pokemon, and almost pretty much anything that came on Toonami or Adult Swim in that time range was instrumental for so many of us growing up in the 90s to get into anime. So anyways, and I'd also categorize this show along with its peers of Outlaw Star, Trigun, and Cowboy Bebop. All came out in 1998, and what I consider and categorize the holy trinity of space westerns. All of them share some a lot of similarities with each other, but again, my personal favorite was always Outlaw Star, and is my all-time favorite anime to this day. So anyways, the story, the synopsis here of Outlaw Star is... So it takes place, or starts off, on this backward planet called Sentinel-3, where main character Gene Starwin and his best friend Jim Hawking, where they're basically just kind of... They take odd jobs for their little small business. They'll do just about anything just to make a living. Yet Gene kind of always longs to go into space and just for something more. He doesn't feel super fulfilled, and which is something I can definitely relate to because I'm always seeking some kind of new adventure. My day-to-day life is usually just kind of, it's fine, but I want to travel some more, so it's something that I can relate to. So anyways, the two characters, they kind of get mixed up in a much grander story, where they take what they think is just a normal job, being bodyguards for this woman named Hilda. Quickly escalates, as it turns out Hilda is actually a famous outlaw, which, a little bit of context, so in this series, there are three main factions. So there's the Outlaws, where they're just kind of like their own independent entity, not necessarily good or evil, they're just more in it for themselves. Then you've got the K-Pirates. So, pirates are typically bad. They kind of want to plunder and do bad things. Then you've got the Space Force, which is kind of the galactic, more or less police force, where they try to keep law and order in the, throughout the galaxy, and particularly in the frontier areas. So anyways, Hilda snatched this valuable ship called, I just brought it up so that way I wouldn't forget it, the XGP 15A-2, which later becomes dubbed the Outlaw Star, which is a lot easier to remember than that series of numbers and letters. So anyways, so the K-Pirates are after her because she stole the ship, and along with the bio-android named Melfina, who's kind of key to piloting the ship, along with getting to the galactic ley line. So the galactic ley line, that's kind of what everyone is seeking, because supposedly, if you reach the galactic ley line, no one's entirely sure what it is, but they somehow know that if they get there, it'll essentially grant them whatever they wish for. So obviously, all the different factions, from the Outlaws, the Pirates, Space Force, all of them want a piece of that. And so that's why the K-Pirates are in particular after Hilda, because they got some beef with her. And so, anyways, once Jean and Jim are thrust into this scenario, they kind of become the inheritors of the Outlaw Star. And they kind of just roll with it. And overall, the series is pretty episodic. It doesn't really, like, and kind of similar to, like, Cowboy Bebop and Trigun, where, again, all three series, like, Outlaw Star is only 26 episodes. I think the other two are around the same, so all under 30 episodes. And for the most part, episodic, but there is a main narrative kind of through line throughout the series. But essentially, Outlaw Star follows those those three, Jean, Jim, Elfina, and then later they're joined by two other characters, Twilight Suzuka, who's kind of this elite assassin / one of the best sword fighters in the galaxy, along with Aisha Clan, who's a member of the Catarl race, who are like these humanoid cat people. And basically, it follows this motley crew of people, as a lot of it is just kind of them off on various adventures where they're just trying to essentially keep the lights on in the ship and pay for fuel, because that's one thing I really like about this show is a lot of sci-fi series, whether it be movies, shows, whatever, and I get it for simplicity's sake, it just shows them, traveling from like planet to planet, galaxy to galaxy in their ships, and never really explaining like how they fund that. Whereas this show, again, a lot of the time they're basically just barely scraping by to like pay for fuel so that way they can go to different planets in search of the galactic ley line and just take other jobs. So I don't know. It's a nice blend of comedy and drama, like most other anime, which is one thing that I really like about this show. Again, along with the cast of characters, because all of them have different personalities and different interests, and some of them kind of reluctantly team up together until eventually, as in typical fashion, they kind of become this sort of pseudo family with each other. But again, basically just follows these characters off on different adventures, trying to evade the pirates, because the pirates are always pursuing them, and also coming across fellow outlaws, some of which are a bit more friendly, others are their rivals, like the McDougal brothers, who are kind of a constant foil for Gene Starwind in particular, because they come to find out later, not a huge spoiler, come to find out later that they were responsible for his dad's death, so he's got some beef. Not just because that, but other reasons they got beef. So the McDougal brothers are kind of like the, I guess, main antagonists, because I guess the big bad doesn't really come into play until much later. The kind of sort of leader of the Tempa Empire, who are one of the factions, and they're kind of the leader of the K-Pirates as well. So that doesn't really start to come into play, again, a little bit later into the series. Maybe about midway through, that storyline starts to kind of become a bit more impactful. But overall, like, the McDougal brothers are kind of the constant Thorn and Jean and the gang's side, until the last episode, when all the different factions kind of come together and all the stories coalesce in their efforts to find and essentially find the galactic ley line and essentially get whatever their wish may be. And another thing too that I really like about this series is I like that they combine magic into this sci-fi. And they do it really well, because the weapon that Jean uses is called a caster. So it's basically this big, kind of bulky pistol, where basically each cartridge or shell has a different effect. And they're all like numbered, like, shell number 3, shell number 12, and all do different things, which a lot of times Jean doesn't really know what the effect will be. Obviously it's going to blow something up, or it's going to cause a lot of damage. Sometimes it's the dud too, though, which kind of adds to the tension. But essentially all of them have different effects. And he doesn't always know what the effect is going to be, so he tries to be kind of selective on when he uses the caster. Usually in desperate situations, he'll pull it out and blast somebody. And sometimes it's just a really powerful kind of explosion. Other times it might have something where it takes like half of his life force. So, it's, again, something interesting too with the caster is it's kind of he's always constantly rolling the dice to see, one, if does it actually have an effect? Does it misfire? If it does have an effect, what effect does it have? Is it detrimental to him and the rest of the gang, or is it just like a cool, he fires it off, kills whoever they're fighting, and saves the day. So that's a lot of fun too to experience that throughout the series, and love the animation because again, this was like back in the day when like everything was basically hand drawn and then later animated, which I get why anime doesn't really do a whole lot of that now because it's just cheaper, and with just the sheer high demand of anime these days, yeah, I get why there's so much computer animation and CGI and stuff like that, but I do miss the days of, again, that hand drawn animation of the 90s and even early 2000s, and then of course prior to the 90s, like 80s, 70s and stuff like that, there's the same thing. But I just love that art style. Again, solid theme song too, which I'm a sucker for a good theme for anything, whether it be a TV show, movie, anime, and love that opening theme. Love the animation. Just, I'm probably really underselling this show, but it is so good, and it's the simplicity of the story too. So another reason why I would compare it to its peers of Trigun and Cowboy Bebop is all three are fairly relatively simple stories. Trigun maybe being the more complex of the three, but overall they're fairly simplistic. Nothing groundbreaking, nothing super, I guess, original in a sense. But there's a beauty in that. Like, I like the beauty of its simplicity, and kind of in a way reminiscent of Star Wars A New Hope, where that had a lot of different elements mixed into it, because it's definitely sci-fi, but it's sci-fi fantasy with Western influences, influences from like Japanese cinema, and this show definitely feels kind of similar. Whether it was inspired directly by Star Wars, I wouldn't be surprised if it was, but I mean, a lot of stuff has been influenced by Star Wars, but I don't know, just, I love just the aesthetics about the show, the characters. I love the lore, because at the beginning of every episode, there's like this voiceover that kind of talks a little bit about like how spacefaring technology was first created, and how humans first went into space and all that. And something as a kid, like after watching this show, is I always wanted more, because again, there's only 26 episodes. That's it. And I always wanted more, and even to this day, in my 30s, I still selfishly want more. Whether it's like a new series of adventures with Gene Starwin and the gang, or more stories in this show's universe. However, I think it's best that this show was basically one and done. Like, the writer knew the story they wanted to tell, they wrote it, and then they were done. And I honestly wish more, I guess, for the simplicity's sake, franchises, of any kind, whether it be, again, movies, shows, comics, whatever. I wish more franchises kind of knew when to quit. Like, end on a high note, and leave fans wanting more, but at the same time don't just keep dragging it on until we stop caring. Like a lot of other franchises, unfortunately, that I won't go into, because then that'll just turn into a big, long, rambly rant. Yeah, I love... Again, it's only 26 episodes, so for those of you who are, maybe wanting a new show to start, not sure what you're looking for, cannot recommend Outlaw Star, because it checks so many boxes. Because again, it's at its core, it's sci-fi, but has elements of Western. Obviously, anime, so it's got some, Eastern flavor in there, not just Japanese, but like other Asian cultures. It's got some magic / fantasy elements in there. And again, great animation, likable characters. So yeah, to me, it checks so many boxes for me personally. And admittedly, part of it is nostalgia, because I remember loving the show so much as a kid, but even as an adult, I've rewatched this show basically every year. It's just part of my tradition, along with my annual Lord of the Rings extended cut tradition, because I love this show so much. And more people need to know about this show, especially if you like anime, and especially If you like those other anime that I mentioned, like Trigun and Cowboy Bebop, and you have not watched Outlaw Star for whatever reason, cannot recommend it enough. So, again, I've probably completely undersold this amazing series, but this is 10 out of 10 for me. Cannot recommend it enough. And I wish more people knew about this show. I wish more people loved this show. Because it's great. It's a very underrated series. So, do me a favor. Even if you thought this was a terrible review, go watch this show. At least give it a go. Like, if it's not your thing, that's fine, but at least check it out. Give it a go. Let me know your thoughts. Whether you liked it, whether you didn't, who are your favorite characters? Have you ever heard of this show? Did I even pique your interest in checking out this show? Let me know in the comments below. Also, before I wrap this up, recently recorded episode 4 of the Pace Pale podcast with my friend Elijah, where we did talk a lot about anime, among many other things like D&D, comic books, and all that stuff. So go check that out. It was a lot of fun. It's very long. It's like 3 hours long, so just be aware. It's a lengthy episode. So definitely going to keep that going. I don't know, probably do some more reviews over Brews as well. So give me suggestions too for things you would like me to review of any medium. And also, if you are like me and love beer, give me good beer recommendations. And if I can't, and I'll see if I can't get a hold of it, that type of beer, and review the next form of medium over said beer. But that wraps up this video. So until next, everyone, cheers.